Hey everybody, Mary Fran Bontempo here. And before we get started with today's show, I just wanted to let you know that my new book, From Broken to Brilliant, How to Live a Brilliantly Resilient Life, is available on Amazon. Super excited about this book, which provides a roadmap of how to live a brilliantly resilient life. You'll get advice not only from me, but from so many dozens of our podcast guests who were kind enough to share their tips on how to reset, rise, and reveal your own brilliance. So head on over to Amazon, get a copy of the book From Broken to Brilliant, and now let's get on with the show. Welcome to the Brilliantly Resilient podcast. What's your train wreck? Everyone has one. The question is, are you just visiting or are you going to live there? I'm Mary Fran Bontempo. Join me and let's learn how to come through those train wrecks, not broken, but brilliant. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Brilliantly Resilient podcast. Today I have a leadership expert with us, and I'm really eager to get into Meg Gluth's story. Meg Gluth is the owner and CEO of Catalynt Solutions, Inc., which is one of the largest certified women-owned chemical suppliers in North America. And Meg notes that her path was not always easy or direct, I would dare to say, but it taught her the critical importance of compassion, empathy, and resilience in leadership. So Meg, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
You know, as you and I were chatting a few minutes before we hit record here, I said I loved the word critical in saying critical importance of compassion, empathy, and resilience in leadership. I mean, I think the word resilience, which of course is one of my cornerstones here too, I think that almost has turned into one of those words that people either don't pay attention to or it's a mystery to them, you know. But what I don't think they often realize is that compassion and empathy can be a part of that. So before we get into your whole leadership stuff, tell me a little bit about how you got here in the first place, a little bit about your journey.
Sure. This, if I told the whole story, is a
The
4-hour
saga? Are we
podcast.
talk? We're talking epic
Yeah,
here, right? We're talking
an
epic.
epic.
Okay.
So I
Give
like
me
to
the
hit the
cliff notes.
highlight reel, but I preface it that way to suggest that when I'm giving the highlight reel, I don't want listeners to think that anything is ever clean and tidy, because
Right.
it's not. And if they are not clean and tidy, which most people are not, that's perfectly normal and acceptable. I grew up below the poverty line in rural Iowa. There were some great things about that, and there were some not so great things about that. And I think it's important to note that both things can be true at the same time. As a result, there was also a lot of events in my life that led me led me to be troubled, and led me to a place where maybe I didn't adequately or appropriately deal with emotions and with a lot of the experiences I was having. And I think sometimes we see, I tell people, if you gave me the ACEs test, the adverse childhood experiences, I'd probably test pretty high on that. And I think we tend to see some correlation there between poverty and some of those things. And that was certainly true for me. But the bottom line of all of that is that I arrived in a place where I had a lot of big feelings and a lot of life events that I wasn't unprepared, I guess, for dealing with, and I didn't have the skills for it. I
Mhm.
turned to alcohol as a way to handle that. First, it was just social drinking. I started college, um, took out all the student loans, all the grants, all the scholarships, all the things you do when you're low income and you go to college. And instead of looking at that saying, wow, what an achievement to be here, I ended up prioritizing these improper coping mechanisms over my studies and over sort of right choice,
Hmm.
and ultimately was kicked out of my first college.
Hmm.
Had to go back to the workforce. I learned what it was to work without a college degree and what it was like, where the ceiling was going to be for me in most cases. Went back to community college to get the kind of grades I needed to get in order to prove that I was college worthy, and ended up going back to 4-year university after I did that. So all in all, it took me about 7 years to get a bachelor's
Wow.
degree. And
And a lot of persistence there, which I imagine you didn't even realize you had.
no, not at all. Not even conscious at all about my own input into that. And in fact, I will say about this that during the time that was happening, I did not feel like a courageous or resilient person at
We
all
never
because
do when we're
that's
in the
right.
middle of it.
Because you can be courageous and resilient while also still engaging in some of those behaviors and some of those coping mechanisms that are unhealthy. Again, both things being true at the same time. I moved from there then to law school. And that's a story in and of itself, but ultimately I was graduating college, didn't know what to do, took the LSATs sort of on a whim, and went to law school. And right before I was to start, received word that I didn't have a financial aid package that would cover all of that. And that meant I needed private loans. Well, when you come from family that doesn't really have, like I tell people all the time, there's no rich uncle in my story. And so when you come from that, it's really hard to find somebody who can co-sign on loans and somebody who can kind of give you the financial backing you need. And I certainly didn't have that. I had no credit score myself. And a friend of mine's dad co-signed on my loans. This guy
Oh my
that's
gosh.
sort of tangentially related to me. He doesn't, yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
that's your
Exactly.
lifeline guy right there. You're one of your early lifeline guys.
Yes, changed my stars. And we're not talking about like $30,000 of student loans. We're talking about like $120,000 of student loans when it's all said and done. A really big amount of money. And he co-signed on that, which was really magical in my life. Like I
I
say
want to
that.
stop you for one
Yeah,
second because you talk about one act of kindness that changed the trajectory of everything. Is this what we're referencing?
100%. 100%. It wasn't even kindness. You have to understand it was craziness. Like, look at me. I'm
That's, I mean, talk about really putting your faith in a young person. And again, that is a huge leap of faith because
it is.
you just don't know, but God bless them.
Amazingly, amazingly. And there's something in him that led him to that, which
Mm-hmm.
ultimately benefited me.
Mm-hmm.
While I was in law school, during my second year of law school, my partner at the time was diagnosed, she was diagnosed with ovarian cancer.
Oh,
And so I'm a second year law student. I'm taking care of a person who is ultimately terminally ill.
oh.
And soon after I went and took the bar exam and was sworn in for admission in the state of Minnesota, she passed away. And that for me marked a huge turning point in my life in terms of sort of being a person who had maybe experiences that I'd been avoiding for years. Then I'm in this process of, okay, I have to get through law school. I have to do this. I'm going to study. I also never missed a chemotherapy appointment. I
Oh.
never missed a doctor's appointment. I never missed a surgery. I just put my head down and I did all of that. But I didn't do it in a way that felt, in hindsight, healthy or whole or embodied, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
once she died, it was very uh, devastating for me in the sense that what I started to do was to lean harder into this alcohol addiction. It's important to note that this does not mean that I spun off the deep end and went to jail and was driving drunk. I didn't do any of those things. I was an incredible worker that whole time. And I mention this because a lot of people who struggle with addiction think that if they're not in those places like jail or losing jobs or showing up to work drunk, that they're fine. I
Mm-hmm.
was not fine. Even though I was going to work sober and holding a job and being a great employee, I wasn't fine. And I continued in that state of not fine, what I call functional alcoholism.
Mm-hmm.
I moved to the West Coast out of the Midwest in order to have sort of a change of scenery post grief event. And in 2011, uh, I decided that I couldn't do that anymore. And I got sober in October of 2011, and this marks another turning point. Messy, terribly difficult, but I haven't had a drink since, and my life has taken off in amazing directions because about 6 months after I got sober, I met the guy that owned this company prior to me. And I started for him as the company's first general counsel when I don't think I had a 6 month coin yet when I started here.
Goodness. Another
And
person who took a chance. Now,
that's right.
did he know about your history at that point, or was
He
that something
did.
you were not
No,
telling
it was really kind of cool. And again, whether you're a spiritual person or not, like I think there's times when things happen that you can't explain. But my very first day on the job, he invited me to a company happy hour to go meet the other members of the team. And we were walking to the company happy hour and he said, there's drinks, there's food, like just get to know people. And I said, well, I don't drink. And again, like I said, I don't think I had a 6 month coin quite yet. Um, and that was kind of a risk for me to say that to him.
Yeah.
And he said, me neither. And we had this amazing walk where we
Mm.
bonded over the fact that we both had this shared life experience.
Wow,
And so that
amazing.
manifested in other cool ways. But ultimately, and again, a long business story, a few years later in 2019, well, in 2012, I was the company's general counsel. In approximately 2014, I became the CEO. And in 2019, I bought 55% of the company from him. And then a year later, the remainder of the company from him. And again,
Wow.
it's a long story, and there are no rich uncles in the story. There's a whole separate podcast on sort of what it is to bootstrap and to literally lay yourself on the line. But when I bought the company in 2019, we were doing about $48 million a year in revenue, and now we are just a very solid 100 million, 100 to 120 million
Oh
dollar
my
a year company.
gosh. That's incredible.
Yeah, so it's been an interesting and amazing ride.
Well, the things that just jump out to me are that very often, to go back to one of our initial points, you don't know that you're being resilient. I think resilience has become one of those, like I said, either mystical words or a word that people just hear too much and they don't even think about it. But the truth of the matter is, we all have resilience within us. It's there. And it's simply, at its most simple, it's just getting up again. Like that's pretty
Yes,
much what it is.
yes,
It's getting up again, regardless of the circumstances, just trying again, getting up and trying again. But to have experienced all of those things that you experienced and be able to, and it's not matter of fact when you're going through it. It's very, very challenging. But when you do get to the other side, you can look back at those things and go, you know what? I had to go through that for whatever reason.
yes.
But the resilience is in there. But what you take away from those experiences, that's the thing that allows you to grow. So I'm always a big one for talking about growing through
Hmm.
challenges and what those things teach you. So to that end, how did those experiences influence your leadership style as you moved very quickly into that role? Because it sounds
Right,
like, yes, you had some challenges, but that in and of itself, moving into that leadership role had to be challenging. So
for sure.
how did your other experiences influence that and your leadership style?
Well, I will say, first of all, that life is a full contact sport, and there are lots of things written.
Oh, I am right there with you. In case you don't know, my son is in he's sober 13 years
Awesome.
from both
Just like
alcohol
me.
and heroin addiction. So,
Good for him.
I get the struggles. I didn't go through them
Yes.
personally, but I witnessed them firsthand. And I
Yes.
know how hard it is. And he is also doing incredibly well, which is not the ending that a lot of people get from your
Yes.
story and his story. So
That's right.
I want to talk about what made the difference. And then,
Yes.
like I said, I want to talk about how those things influence your leadership style, your experiences.
I think what makes the difference, and I'm not an expert on everybody's experience through these things, I'm only an expert on mine. And even then, I'm still a self study, probably till I die. As I said, life is a full contact sport, and our acceptance of that is sort of one of the key defining moments. A lot of people talk about resilience or perseverance or whatever it's going to be, fortitude, and they're waiting for this moment when they can train themselves into that. When you can read enough books or you can, make a vision board or do enough
Yeah. When it
mantras.
happens. Yeah.
That's right. But the reality is that those things happen in these weird moments that you don't know they're happening to you in. So let's take the your son's story and mine. At some point you hit whatever your rock bottom is. And that moment looks ugly. And I
Hmm.
say that it's not rock bottom if there are no rocks. And we're living in a society right now where people want to make rock bottom more comfy for
Like a
people.
beanbag chair.
Yes, we look at people suffering and we don't want them to suffer. But the very suffering, the intensity of the suffering is what somebody like me or your son needs in order to get out. Because change and resilience and healing and recovery is an inside job first. And you cannot do that unless you are deeply uncomfortable. And so I accept the full contact nature of the sport and I accept the discomfort. I hate that and I wish I could change it. And when it's happening, I feel, in a word, shitty about it.
Hmm. Sure.
But if it's not like that, then why would I ever leave that?
What's the motivation to move?
That's right.
Why move?
That's right.
If you can, it's almost like when people say you stick with the devil, you know, if you're comfortable
Yes,
in that discomfort, and a lot of people get comfortable in discomfort, there's no motivation to make it any different.
that's right. That's right. And so while people might be looking for this beautiful way to train themselves to be resilient, the question really is, where am I most uncomfortable and how ugly is that? And how much am I willing to tolerate the discomfort of the unknown of where I'm going versus staying in the comfort of even something that's uncomfortable? Because what we don't realize is that even our dysfunction becomes comfy. Like
Oh,
we get
absolutely.
used to it.
It's
Yeah,
like the crack on the ceiling in your house that's been there for so long and you keep looking at it and thinking, I'm going to fix it. And then you don't see it anymore. It's
that's right.
there, but you don't see it because you
That's
are
right.
living in this state that you've become accustomed to.
That's right. That's
And
right.
and it does take a very conscious, intentional decision to
Yes.
make those first steps. And I talk about this a lot, those imperfect action steps, because
Yes.
there is no pat solution to getting out of there. It's one imperfect action after another. And did you
Exactly
find
right.
that to be true?
100%. And it's messy and it's ugly and it's not pretty and it usually costs you a lot. I don't really have any friends that I had before I quit drinking. I literally had to overhaul my entire life, and that is painful. It
Ugh.
is easy to stand on the outside of somebody who's struggling with addiction or struggling with any kind of dysfunction in their life. You can stand outside and be like, I don't know why she wants to live with like that. I don't know why she wants to still be with those people. Because whether you know it or not, I care about those people and I like this life and I'm afraid of what change means.
Mhm.
And so I lost a lot of things and endured a lot of pain in order to get to the next level in my life. And I will tell you, I've never had the opportunity to go to the next level in my life without enduring pain on my way there. It does not exist.
I was just going to ask you, so do you feel like that some sort of loss is almost a part of growth?
Yes.
I,
Yeah,
I,
because that we see that in nature too, right? Things die before they drop seeds or you know what I mean? Like I think that's the way that we were designed. Something old has to go away to make room for something new.
I'm listening to you, and I have to be honest, I had just a few stomach clenching moments when you were talking about how difficult that process is to execute in terms of of shifting your life because people in that position, their whole support system supported the addiction, whether
That's
they,
right.
you know, admit it directly or not. The whole
100%.
way they were living, the whole support system supported that lifestyle. And it is very hard when you're feeling lonely and there's that hole, because this is all about kind of self-medicating too, that
Yes.
there's that hole in you that you're trying to fill to realize that you have to get even emptier
Yes.
before you can start to rebuild. So it takes an immense amount of courage to say yes to that and to execute those steps. So, I mean, kudos to you because I've seen it firsthand and I know how hard it is.
It's hard not just for the person doing it, but for the people around. I say this all the time. I am a person who struggled with addiction. I know that if there are no rocks at rock bottom, I will not heal. Ergo, don't you put a mattress on top of those rocks for me. I am
Hmm.
also a mother. If one of my children was struggling with addiction, I cannot tell you right now that I wouldn't be rushing there to put a mattress over the top of every single one of their consequences because watching my child suffer would kill me.
It is the worst. It is
So,
just the worst.
right. So, this is why we're struggling right now, right? This is why we're struggling on a broader scale with addiction. And this is why we struggle on the micro with all the little things that we're trying to change in our lives because well meaning people around us just don't want to see us suffer. And we don't want to suffer.
And
I
I
take,
think
go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think that that's the point where you have to recognize that as much as your nearest and dearest love you and want the best for you, sometimes they're not the right people to push you out of that comfortable spot because,
That's right.
you know, they want to pat you on the head, they want to hug you, they want to make it all better. That is not what you need. You need somebody who's going to give it to you straight. And my son always says, and I love that he recognizes this. He says, I always appreciated the people who cared more about my life than about my feelings
Yes.
because they were the
Yes.
people who were willing to say to them, "Hey, this is stupid and you're going to kill yourself." And to give him the toughness that he needed to just say this is A, possible, and B, necessary if you want to live.
100%. And you asked earlier, like, then how does this translate into business? And I think
Mhm.
really quite easily. When someone makes a mistake around here, which happens to 100% of the people who work here, including myself, because we're all
Mhm.
humans having a human experience, I don't rush in there to be like, it's okay, you're still a good person. Listen, there is a segment of leadership school that says like every employee should feel good every single day at work all the time and just bend over backwards. When we screw up, I say, this is a giant mess.
Mhm.
What are your suggestions for how we move out of it? It's twofold. Number one, I'm not going to put a mattress here on your rock bottom. This sucks. Whether you contributed directly or indirectly to this, it does. We're going to acknowledge the truth of that. And then, in a nod to your inner confidence and your inner fire and your inner power, I'm going to ask you what you suggest we do about it. Meaning, you screwed up, but I still trust that you know the answer. Two things can happen at the same time. And that's the start of resilience in a business is to say, okay, I see that you messed this up. I also know that you hold within you, and this opportunity holds within it the seeds of some success to come from this failure. And I'm going to ask you to lead us out of it. That is the core of resilience. Fall down and know that you are the person that can get back up.
Yeah, exactly. And I think there is a measure of, and this is intrinsic to encouraging resilience in people, there's a measure of respect that goes with that. I
100%.
respect that you failed, but I also respect that you can get yourself up and help us figure out how to get out of this.
That's right. Now, what we won't be doing is laying around together in your failure. And if you're the kind of person that needs to do that or wants to do that or just chooses that in your life, I ultimately think everybody is at the end of the road just choosing that.
Oh
Then
yeah.
you won't fit in with our culture here. And then that's a different conversation. I'm not
I
asking you to be perfect, but I'm asking you to be a person that grabs for the rebound after you miss the shot.
One of the things that I say in Brilliantly Resilient is that every challenge comes with a decision first. Are
That's
you
right.
just visiting or are you going to live there?
That's right. 100%.
You don't bring your
100%.
bags and unpack them and go, oh, well, this is me. This is it just defines me. This is where I'm going to live. You look at it and go, all right, this is happening. And again, I am all for acknowledging your disappointment, your pain, your upsetment. Get all that out of your system. And
Yes.
then it's one imperfect action after another. What are we going to do about this?
That's right. And I'm leading in a time in history where we've looked at people and said, it's okay to ask the culture to not make you feel a certain way. It's okay to ask the culture to not offend you or to not upset you or to not stress you out or to not pressure you. And I can't do that here. We are a business. We have things to do. Things are going to happen here where, we move containers of material all over the world. We're going to have a shipping crisis. We're going to have something show up that's leaking. We're going to, whatever it is, somebody's going
Mhm.
to not pay us. Like, this is what happens. And I can't shield you from that, and I won't. The question is whether that coming at you, do you have the internal strength, fortitude, and discipline to handle that? And I think we are learning what it looks like when we coddle ourselves and try and block ourselves from meeting anything difficult or challenging or hard. We're starting to see the effects of that.
Mhm.
And I don't know if we like that. And we certainly can't tolerate it in business and then have a successful, profitable enterprise. You can't do both.
You can't. And I think it also, you really can't separate that from a personal life either. You have to recognize that those skills, first of all, they're transferable. So if you have maybe overcome or navigated challenges in your personal life, you have the skills to do it in your business life. They're already there. You just have to transfer them from one place to the other and recognize again what your brilliance is, what your strengths are. Um, one of the things that you talk about though is empathy and kindness. So how
Mm-hmm.
do you jive that with, I mean, obviously you're not the kind of person who's going to come down hard on somebody, but there does have to be a bit of toughness and accountability. How do you jive that with the kindness and empathy piece? And why is that important?
I didn't invent that. I feel like that's actually when I got into I went into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, right? And there's a lot of different things, but accountability is love. So are there
Hmm,
times
I
when I
like
come
that.
down a little bit hard in this business? There are. There are times when I do. Now, I tend to be a person that doesn't listen, if you're a leader that's walking into rooms and screaming and whatever, there might be an ego thing you need to check. And if I'm ever doing that, and I'm not saying I haven't lost my temper, but it's always a check engine light for my own
Right, right, right.
trying to check myself. But I am firm. And I think that the people who work for me would tell you that I am both firm and loving at the same time. And I think even my kids would tell you that. You can be a person that says, and you just said it, I care more about your future than your feelings. Like, I don't know when it's like I'm saying a new novel idea, but I'm not. To say that you can be empathetic, you can be compassionate, you can be kind and hold someone accountable. Accountability is the structure and the discipline and the knowledge for an employee, for a child, for a spouse. This is what it takes. These are my boundaries. This is what it takes to be successful here. And when people know where the bar is and they know where the line is, they feel more comfortable, Mary Fran. Like that is just what is. It's true for my kid who's 6, and it's true for my, operations manager who's 46. Like everybody needs to know this is what's expected of me. This is what it takes for me to be successful. These are the things I can't do. These are the boundaries. And if I do that, there are consequences. And when people know what the rules of the game are, they feel free to play at their very best. The
Hmm.
kindest thing we can do is tell people what the rules of the game are. And when they run afoul, to call them on it. And somehow we've lost the narrative. We've lost the discussion around accountability being loving. But it is, because then that's how people shine.
That is just brilliant. The accountability is love because and I'm thinking kids and all that here, because you are giving people the tools to function, not only in a particular environment, but in the world at large. You are accountable to be certain things as a human. You're accountable to be certain things in this job. You're accountable to be certain things in this family. And by teaching that and showing that, you also teach people what the value system is
Yeah.
of you and your family and your company and all those. And it's again, it's like building blocks. I know you're talking, we've got little kids there. It's like you're building one of those Lego sets that shows,
Yeah.
how to build a successful life, business, whatever. Because you are equipping people. And that at the end of the day is the job of a leader and the
Yeah.
job of a mother and the job of a CEO and all of those people who are, kind of leading anyone for any reason is to give them the value system, the structure, and then therefore the opportunity once they get, as you said, the rules
Hmm.
to be able to grow and to play at their highest level.
That's right. That's right. Because I'm not doing you a service telling you, and again, it all comes back. Parenting and leading a business are so similar. It's crazy to
Mhm.
me. But I'm not doing you a favor like being your friend all the time because I'm not equipping you for success that way.
Right.
It's the same thing with being effective leader. You are capable of being up here. You're performing down here. My job is to say to you, I'm going to push you. I'm going to stretch you. I'm going to grow you to your capacity because I know when you're standing on the top of that line, how good you're going to feel about yourself. And by the way, when you feel good about yourself and you're at your capacity, it turns into real profit for my business. And then once you're there and you're comfy, I'm going to keep raising your bar. And you're going to love the continuous challenge. And I'm going to love the way that you continue to add value here. And it works for everyone. And I'm going to reward you for that too, by the way. Like that's the other part of the situation here.
Right.
Business isn't all sticks, there's also carrots. And I'm a big believer in that too. I don't give rewards. I don't give bonuses just because they happen to work here. And so you're a body and I say, I do that because we're working together and we earned that together. And you have a right to enjoy that fruits of those labors.
And that is enormous because at the end of the day, everybody wants to be a part of something, whether it's a
Yes.
family, whether it's their company, whether it's whatever. And again, going back, I'm the least sports-oriented person who should not be using a sports analogy, but when you know the rules in the playbook and you can work within that structure. And that doesn't mean that you don't experiment. It doesn't mean that you don't try things. It doesn't mean that you're not rigid. But I go back a lot of times to, okay, here's our value system. Here's what we need to see because you're a business, financially and monetarily and
Yeah,
production wise and all of that. Here's what we need to see. And here's how I want to help you get there. Then the responsibility is on that person. And then it is their job to accept it, just as it was your job to accept the challenges that came with becoming sober. And
that's
the
right.
same way that my son did. But when you have that community, when you have that support system, when you have that leadership, and when you have people who see the things in you that are willing to invest something in you,
Yeah,
that's what we all need, whether it's a business, a community, a family, or whatever, to keep the house of cards standing.
that's right. And I think there's dignity in that. I mean, I tell
Yes,
people all the time, there's dignity in hard work. There's, at its simplest form, my daughter is 8 years old. She loves the game chess. I'm not very good at chess. But when she plays with anybody, she says, and she wins, she says, "You didn't let me win, did you?" She can't stand the
it's the worst.
idea.
Yeah,
That's right. Of gathering a win that she didn't really win.
she didn't earn.
In this business, in life in general, I think it's okay to say I call myself a human-centered capitalist because I don't make any secret of the fact that I want a for-profit company that makes money. That's sort of the point. Um, we can also be mindful in that there is dignity in working hard and going home at the end of the day saying, I earned this paycheck.
Hmm.
I earned what I got. This bonus came to me because I busted it out. And if you don't believe me, ask somebody who's been out of work for a while and is at home collecting unemployment how they feel about themselves. The number one thing they will tell you about why they want to go back to work is because they want to feel useful, they want to feel productive, they want to get some of that dignity back. And so we have to acknowledge that in the way we run companies too. And we have to keep challenging people's growth and their need to contribute.
So it is that need to contribute. Is it also, do you try to encourage that? Um, how do you encourage, perhaps is the better question. How do you encourage that empathy then and kindness within the structure of a business? When, yes, I mean, clearly you're looking to make money. It's a business. That's what you want to do. But I do think that that empathy and that kindness, if it's channeled correctly and it's not a, as you said, sweep the mistakes under the rug so you don't feel bad kind of thing, how do you see that being effective in terms of leadership and the bottom line, let's say, for a company?
Mhm.
How does that contribute to that?
We hire here based on the concept that the empathy and the kindness is shown through. I tell them, I don't ever hide the ball from you. If you work for me, and people here will tell you almost in a laughable way, like we're never unclear about what Meg thinks of us. That's part of my empathy. They're a human being that deserves to know what's expected of them and where I stand. So I don't do these weird shadow games with, today she's happy, but tomorrow she's not. I don't bring a mood disorder into this business. I call it that, but I think leaders that are always trying to please everybody all the time, like it's chaotic, right? It ends up looking like a
Yeah.
mood disorder. They know that they can depend on stability from me and they can depend on my respect. And that is the empathy, that is the kindness. And then when they're having a hard time with their life, and I've had this, I've had employees that have had to take time off for an unexpected death of a family member and they don't have the PTO and they don't have the bereavement leave. We just give it to them and we keep paying them. You want to know why? Because they're never going to abuse that
Hmm.
because they understand the culture. They understand that they're giving to something and now the system is giving to them. And every single time when they come back, Mary Fran, they work hard and they fill in the gap when their coworker needs to leave for a reason like that.
Hmm.
We have at our company a policy of unlimited half days. You don't have to take PTO to go to your kid's baseball game or to have a dental appointment or whatever. Do you know that of all the people here and at a plant and all, nobody abuses that? Why do you think that is? Because it's empathetic, it's kind to say, I value your time with your family. And because I'm respecting you, I get that back. You respect what we're trying to do here too. And your coworkers need to go to a baseball game tomorrow. So people are in that system and we've created those values. We need to change the definition of what it means to be empathetic and kind at work. It doesn't mean you get everything you want all the time. It doesn't mean all the snacks in the break room are the greatest. It means that you work in a place that recognizes the dignity of you as a person, recognizes the value of your contributions, and recognizes that you're a human being with things to do. And as long as we're all on the same page, and we are here, because if you're not, you don't work here, the system works and it's highly profitable. And it is.
Oh my goodness, I could just sit here and listen to this all day long because you are so preaching to everything that speaks to me, both in terms of what you overcame with your addiction issues, and then about how you took those experiences, and even though the people that work with you perhaps don't share those experiences, you recognize what from those things was able to bring value to your current circumstances. And again, it's that whole transferable skills idea. And when I talk about brilliance and resilience, the very first thing that I talk about resilience with is find out your value system and
Yeah,
find ways to integrate that into everything in your personal life and everything in your business life. Because if you know what you're going to say yes to, you always know what you're going to say no to.
that's right. That's exactly right.
So, Meg, I can't thank you enough for sharing your insights and your wisdom. I love the way you talk about empathy being something like stability. I mean, we do have to change the way I think some of those words are perceived. Empathy doesn't mean, clucking and saying, "Oh, you poor baby," all the
Yeah.
time. It can mean saying, "Here's what we need to do and let's do it together."
Yes. It doesn't mean that you don't pause and give somebody some softness in a moment of
Hmm.
hardship. Listen, when I had an employee who went through a really particularly harrowing family situation, I called them on their personal cell phone. I'm here. I see you. Take the time you need. I can be an empathetic human in that.
Hmm.
It's like you said, are you visiting the spot or do you plan to stay there?
Right.
While somebody is visiting, they do get to visit. If you have a
Absolutely.
tragedy in your life, you do get to visit.
Hmm.
And being empathetic also means standing with somebody in their visiting spot. And then
I
it
love
means
that.
if you're a leader or a parent or the head of your house or whatever it is, then it means saying, okay, visiting hours are over and it's time for me to help you get out. And that's also empathetic. Both things are true.
And I think that's so important to say it's time for me to help you get out because let's face it, those big life challenges, they can be crushing. And
Yes,
and sometimes you can't find your way out of that alone, which is why you need, again, the support of maybe not the people who are closest to you who might be experiencing the same kind of challenge and pain, but maybe somebody else who can say, look, I acknowledge this, I see this, but let's, like you said before, what can we do to get out of this together? What are we going to do to move forward through this situation? So
exactly.
I am so grateful to have had you today on the show. And I want to ask you, first of all, if there's anything you want to leave anybody with, a last little nugget. And second of all, how we can learn more about you and people can get in touch with you, Meg.
For sure. I leave everybody with the nugget that's sort of become my tagline, and that is that where you are is the perfect place to start.
Hmm.
I speak to people who are in dark places right now, not just other CEOs. Listen, we've made it. I don't know. But if you are in a place that feels really, really dark and really, really impossible, that's a great place to start. There's nothing impossible. Keep going. Second, if you want to learn more about me or contact me or things like that, I have a website, www.megangluth.com. Go there, engage through there, and start there. Those emails and those inquiries get answered with a lot better attention than, say, LinkedIn inbox. And that's just because I get a lot and I'm not as good there. But I'd love to hear from you. And particularly, I love people who are at the bottom, whatever bottom is. They're my favorite people in the world because I'm ultimately always one of those myself. So,
Aren't we all? We're all on the journey to
yes,
go higher. No matter
that's
where
right.
we are, we're all on the journey to go higher. Megan Gluth, thank you so much for joining me today. What a great conversation. And for those of you who are looking for a little more inspiration as well, head on over to brilliantlyresilient.net. You'll see one of those magical pop-up boxes where you can put your email in there and you'll get our brilliance bit, which comes to you every time we air a new podcast, and Meg will be a part of that. So I was scribbling frantically trying to get all of her brilliance down. I will be listening to this episode multiple times, but you'll get more of your brilliance there in your inbox every single week. So thanks everybody for joining us. Meg, thank you again. It was a pleasure. And we will see everybody next time on the next episode of the Brilliantly Resilient podcast. Thanks for tuning in to the Brilliantly Resilient podcast. Join our Facebook group and follow us on YouTube to be inspired with tools to reset, rise, and reveal your brilliance.